Princess Zara stood at the massive viewing window of the Kalari Imperial Palace, watching the stars that had become symbols of death. Each point of light in the darkness reminded her of the worlds burning across the galaxy. For 30 years, the war between her people and the Torvan hegemony had consumed everything in its path. Entire civilizations had been reduced to ash and memory. Her crystalline skin, a trait of all pure-blood Kalari, reflected the starlight in patterns of blue and silver. Once, these natural formations had been considered beautiful. Now they felt like armor that could never protect what truly mattered. Behind her, the palace hummed with the constant activity of an empire fighting for survival. "Princess, the Galactic Council awaits your presence." Zara turned to see Commander Finn, her personal guard and oldest friend. His own crystalline features showed the stress lines that had become common among their people. The war had aged everyone before their time. "Tell me, Finn," Zara said as they walked toward the council chamber, "do you think peace is worth any price?" Finn considered the question carefully. He had lost 2 brothers in the war, and his sister commanded a battle cruiser on the front lines. "I think peace is worth almost any price, Princess. But the key word is almost." The council chamber buzzed with tense energy as Zara entered. Representatives from dozens of worlds sat in floating chairs arranged in a perfect circle. At the center stood a holographic display showing the current state of the galaxy. Red zones marked Torvan territory, blue showed Kalari space, and the thin green line between them represented the neutral buffer worlds. "Princess Zara," spoke Elder Vera, the council's senior member. Her ancient voice carried the weight of centuries. "We have received a proposal from the Torvan leadership. They wish to end this war through a marriage alliance." Zara felt her heart sink. She had always known this day might come. Royal marriages for political gain were an old tradition, but she had hoped the modern age had moved beyond such practices. "Who is the proposed groom?" Zara asked, though she dreaded the answer. "That is where the situation becomes unusual," Elder Vera continued. "The Torvans do not wish to marry into our royal line directly. Instead, they have suggested a 3-party alliance involving a neutral species." The holographic display shifted to show a small blue-green world orbiting a yellow star. Earth looked peaceful from space, showing no signs of the advanced civilization that lived on its surface. "The humans," Elder Vera explained, "discovered faster-than-light travel only 50 years ago. They have no significant military power, no vast resources, and no apparent strategic value. However, their location places them directly between our territory and Torvan space." "I do not understand," Zara said. "How does marrying a human help end our war?" Council member Rico, representing the outer colonies, stepped forward. "The idea is elegant in its simplicity. If you marry a human representative, and the Torvans sign a mutual protection treaty with Earth, then any attack by either side would involve humanity. Both our peoples would be forced to consider the consequences of bringing a neutral party into the conflict." Zara studied the image of Earth, trying to understand what made this small world so special. The humans had contacted the galactic community with enthusiasm and wonder. Their messages spoke of peace, cooperation, and hope for the future. Most advanced species had found them charmingly naive. "What do we know about these humans?" Zara asked. Elder Vera waved her hand, and the display showed various images of human society. Cities of glass and metal, vast farms feeding billions, oceans teeming with life. They are remarkably diverse for a single-world species. They have hundreds of different cultures, languages, and belief systems, yet they have managed to unite under a single planetary government for space exploration purposes. "They seem very young," Zara observed. "Indeed. Their recorded history spans only a few thousand years. They have no psychic abilities, no natural defenses against radiation, no extended lifespans. By most measures, they are one of the least advanced species in the galaxy." "Then why would the Torvans agree to this arrangement?" Council member Rico smiled grimly. "Because they believe humans are harmless. A marriage alliance with such a weak species costs them nothing, while the appearance of peace may help them consolidate power in other regions. Zara felt a chill run through her crystalline form. The Torvins were known for their cunning. If they saw advantage in this proposal, there had to be something her own people were missing. "Have you met with any human representatives?" Zara asked. "Yes," Elder Vera replied. "Their chosen representative arrived yesterday. His name is Tom, and he holds the title of Cultural Ambassador. He has agreed to the marriage proposal, though he has requested a private meeting with you first." The council chamber fell silent as everyone waited for Zara's response. She looked around at the faces of beings who had spent decades fighting an endless war. They were tired, desperate, and willing to try anything that might bring peace. "I will meet with this Tom," Zara said finally. "But I make no promises beyond that." 2 hours later, Zara sat in her private garden, surrounded by the bioluminescent plants her ancestors had cultivated for centuries. The gentle blue glow usually calmed her mind, but today her thoughts raced with uncertainty. When Tom entered the garden, Zara was surprised by how ordinary he appeared. Human males were said to be larger than their females, but Tom stood no taller than she did. His skin was a warm brown color, and his dark eyes seemed to take in every detail of the garden with genuine appreciation. "Princess Zara," Tom said, offering a bow that seemed awkward by galactic standards but somehow felt sincere. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with me. Please, sit." Zara gestured to a bench carved from living crystal. "I admit I am curious about your species' willingness to become involved in our conflict." Tom settled onto the bench, his movements careful and deliberate. "My people have studied your war from a distance. We see two great civilizations destroying themselves over resources and territory that could be shared." "Shared," Zara repeated. "You speak as if peace were a simple matter of compromise. Is it not?" Zara felt a flash of irritation. "The Torvins have conquered 17 of our colony worlds. They have enslaved millions of my people. They seek nothing less than the complete destruction of Kalari civilization. There can be no compromise with such evil." Tom nodded slowly. "I have read the historical records. The Torvins say similar things about your people. Are you suggesting we are equally at fault?" "I am suggesting that wars this long and this bitter create their own truth. Both sides have committed acts they would not have considered before the fighting began. Both sides have lost so much that stopping feels like betraying the dead." Zara studied Tom's face, looking for signs of the naivety she expected from such a young species. Instead, she found something that unsettled her. His eyes held a depth that seemed impossible for someone whose civilization had barely reached the stars. "What makes you think a human can help end what the greatest minds in the galaxy have failed to solve?" she asked. "Perhaps because we are not the greatest minds in the galaxy," Tom replied with a slight smile. "Sometimes it takes someone from the outside to see what those inside have forgotten." "And what have we forgotten?" Tom gestured toward the bioluminescent plants surrounding them. "Your ancestors created these gardens as places of peace and reflection. The Torvin homeworld has similar spaces, though they use crystalline formations instead of living plants. Both cultures value beauty, harmony, and the preservation of life. Yet you have been killing each other for 3 decades. You oversimplify the situation." "Do I? Or do your people complicate it?" Tom leaned back on the bench, his posture relaxed despite the weight of their conversation. "My species has a saying, when you are holding a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. Your civilizations have been at war so long that force has become the only tool you can imagine." Zara felt her crystalline skin shift to deeper blue patterns, a sign of emotional stress among her people. "And what tool would you use, human?" "Understanding." The simple word hung in the air between them. Zara had expected political rhetoric or military strategy. Instead, Tom offered something that seemed almost childishly innocent. "You think understanding will stop Torvin battle fleets? I think understanding might prevent the next generation from building them." Before Zara could respond, her communication device chimed with an emergency signal. She activated the holographic display to see Commander Finn's worried face. "Princess, we have received word from the front lines. The Torvins have launched a surprise attack on the Meridian system. 3 colony worlds are under bombardment." Zara felt the familiar weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. More death, more destruction, more reasons for the war to continue. She looked at Tom, who was watching the display with an expression she could not read. "I must go," Zara said, rising from the bench. "The Council will need to respond to this attack." "Of course," Tom stood as well. "Princess, may I ask you something?" "What?" "When this war finally ends, what do you hope your people will remember about who you were during it?" The question stopped Zara cold. In all the strategic planning, all the political maneuvering, all the desperate attempts to save her civilization, no one had ever asked her about legacy in such personal terms. "I hope they will remember that I tried to save them," she said finally. Tom nodded. "Then perhaps we want the same thing." As Zara hurried toward the council chamber, Tom's words echoed in her mind. There had been something in his tone, something in the way he spoke about ending the war, that suggested he knew more than he was revealing. But that was impossible. Humans were a young species with no experience in galactic politics. Wasn't it? The council session lasted through the night as reports came in from Meridian. The Torvin attack was brutal but limited, designed more to send a message than to conquer territory. Elder Vera suggested it was their way of pressuring the Kalari to accept the marriage alliance quickly. As dawn broke over the palace, Zara found herself standing again at the viewing window where her day had begun. The stars looked the same, but something inside her had changed. The conversation with Tom had planted questions she could not ignore. "Princess." Commander Finn approached quietly. "The council has reached a decision. They recommend you accept the marriage proposal." Zara continued staring at the stars. "And if I refuse?" "The war continues. More worlds burn. More people die. And if I accept? We take a chance on something we do not understand." Zara turned to face her old friend. "What would you do, Finn?" "I would ask myself which choice I could live with if it failed." 3 hours later, Princess Zara stood before the Galactic Council and gave her answer. The marriage alliance would proceed. In 1 week, she would bind her life to a human she barely knew, gambling her personal happiness on the slim hope of peace. As the council members filed out to begin preparations, Tom appeared at her side. "Thank you," he said simply. "Do not thank me yet," Zara replied. "You may discover that marrying into a royal family at war is more complicated than your people realize." Tom smiled, and for just a moment, something flickered in his eyes that made Zara's crystalline skin shift to patterns of deep purple. It was not fear exactly, but a recognition that she had just agreed to something far more significant than a political marriage. "Princess," Tom said softly, "I think you may discover that humans are more complicated than anyone realizes." 6 months had passed since the wedding ceremony that united Princess Zara of the Kalari Empire with Tom, the human ambassador. The grand celebration had been broadcast across the galaxy, and for the first time in 3 decades, the guns had fallen silent along the border between Kalari and Torvin space. Zara stood in the morning light streaming through the crystal windows of their shared chambers. The palace had grown quiet in ways she had never experienced. No more urgent military briefings before dawn, no more reports of battles lost and won, no more emergency council sessions that lasted through the night. Peace, it seemed, had a sound all its own. But Tom puzzled her. During the day, he was everything she could have hoped for in a political partner. He attended council meetings with thoughtful questions, learned Kalari customs with genuine respect, and treated her people with kindness that seemed to come naturally. The nobles who had initially dismissed him as a primitive human now spoke of his wisdom and insight. It was the nights that troubled her. Zara had always been a light sleeper, a habit developed during years of war when attacks could come at any moment. She noticed when Tom slipped from their bed in the dark hours before dawn. At first, she assumed he was simply adjusting to the different day cycle of her world. Human biology was still a mystery to most galactic species. But curiosity eventually overcame politeness, and one night she followed him. Tom moved through the palace corridors with surprising confidence for someone who had lived there only a few months. He walked without hesitation, taking turns and using passages that even some of her own staff did not know existed. When he stopped before a sealed door marked with ancient Kalari script, Zara felt her crystalline skin shift to patterns of deep concern. The door led to the Royal Archives, a vast collection of historical records, scientific data, and cultural artifacts that stretched back thousands of years. Access was restricted to senior scholars and members of the royal family. Tom should not have even known the archives existed. Yet somehow, he opened the sealed door without any visible effort. Zara waited several minutes before following him inside. The archives were massive, with corridors of data storage systems that hummed quietly in the darkness. She found Tom in the central reading chamber, surrounded by holographic displays showing historical records, star charts, and technical documents in dozens of different languages. What shocked her was not just the number of displays he had activated, but the speed at which he was absorbing the information. Text scrolled past faster than any organic mind should be able to process, yet Tom's eyes tracked every line with perfect focus. When one document finished, another immediately replaced it. Zara watched from the shadows as Tom consumed centuries of Kalari knowledge in a single night. He studied military tactics, scientific discoveries, diplomatic records, and cultural histories with equal intensity. Most disturbing of all, he showed particular interest in the oldest records, documents from the early days of Kalari civilization that even her own scholars found difficult to understand. When she finally worked up the courage to confront him the next evening, Tom's reaction surprised her. "I wondered when you would ask," he said simply, not looking up from the meal they were sharing in their private dining chamber. "How long have you known I was watching?" "Since the first night. Your crystalline skin reflects light in ways you probably do not realize. It is quite beautiful, actually, like having tiny stars following me through the corridors." Zara felt heat rise in her cheeks, an embarrassing human-like reaction she had developed since spending so much time with Tom. "Why did you not say anything?" "Because you needed to decide for yourself whether to trust me enough to ask." Tom finally looked up from his food, and Zara saw that familiar depth in his eyes that had unsettled her during their first meeting. It was as if he carried knowledge that no human should possess. "What are you looking for in those archives?" she asked. "Understanding," Tom replied, the same word he had used in the garden months ago. "Your people have a remarkable history, Zara. The Kalari were among the first species to achieve faster-than-light travel. Your early explorers mapped routes through space that other civilizations still use today. Your scientists made discoveries that became the foundation for technologies used across the galaxy. These are not secrets. Any galactic citizen can access basic historical records about our achievements." "Yes, but the basic records do not tell the whole story." Tom leaned back in his chair, his expression growing serious. "They do not explain how a species achieved such advances so quickly, or why certain Kalari technologies work in ways that seem to violate known physical laws." Before Zara could respond, the crystal chandelier above their table began to glow more brightly. The light fixtures throughout their chambers responded similarly, creating patterns of illumination that had not been seen in the palace for generations. Both Tom and Zara looked up in surprise. "That is impossible," Zara whispered. "Those crystals are programmed to respond only to direct members of the royal bloodline. The activation patterns require specific genetic markers that take years to program into the palace systems." Tom stared at the lights with an expression that was not surprise, but rather the look of someone remembering something they had forgotten. "Zara, how much do you know about the early days of your civilization? Not the official histories, but the oldest records, the ones written in the ancient script that few scholars can still read?" "Very little. Those documents are mostly myths and legends. Stories about the First Awakening, when our ancestors supposedly received knowledge from the stars. Most historians consider them religious fiction. The lights above them pulsed in rhythm, as if responding to the conversation. Tom reached up toward the nearest crystal, and it flared brilliantly at his touch before returning to normal. What if they were not fiction? Tom asked quietly. Over the following weeks, similar incidents occurred throughout the palace. Ancient security systems that had been dormant for centuries began recognizing Tom as an authorized user. Sealed chambers opened at his approach. Historical artifacts activated in his presence, displaying information that scholars had thought lost forever. The palace staff whispered among themselves, creating theories that ranged from Tom being blessed by ancient spirits to the possibility that humans possessed hidden psychic abilities. Zara found herself caught between rational skepticism and growing unease. The truth was that Tom seemed to understand Kalari technology better than the Kalari themselves. She tested this theory by bringing him to the palace's central computer core, a massive quantum processing system that required trained technicians to operate. Tom studied the interface for less than 5 minutes before beginning to work with it as if he had designed it himself. Tom, Zara said as she watched him navigate systems she barely understood, please tell me what is happening. These abilities you are displaying, they are not normal for humans. Your own people would be amazed by what you can do here. Tom paused in his work, his hands still resting on the control surfaces. Would they? Or would they simply remember what they had forgotten? Before Zara could ask what he meant, alarms began sounding throughout the palace. Emergency lights bathed the corridors in red as Commander Finn's voice echoed from every communication device. All personnel to emergency stations. We have received reports of attacks on 3 Kalari colony worlds in the Outer Rim. This appears to be the work of Torvan extremist groups who reject the peace treaty. Zara felt the familiar cold weight of dread settle in her chest. She had known the peace was fragile, but she had hoped it might last longer than 6 months. I have to go, she told Tom. The council will need to coordinate our response. Of course, Tom replied, but he did not move away from the computer interface. The emergency council session lasted 8 hours. Reports came in describing coordinated attacks on civilian targets, designed to cause maximum casualties while avoiding military installations. It was a deliberate provocation, meant to force the Kalari to respond with violence and break the peace treaty. Elder Vera proposed a measured military response that would target only the extremist bases responsible for the attacks. Council member Rico argued for broader retaliation against Torvan territory. The debate grew heated as emotions overrode diplomatic training. By the time the session ended, Zara felt exhausted and discouraged. The fragile hope of lasting peace was cracking under the weight of old hatreds and fresh grief. As she walked back toward her chambers, she realized she needed Tom's perspective on the situation. His outsider's view had become valuable to her in ways she had not expected. But Tom was not in their chambers. Zara searched the palace, checking the archives, the gardens, and every place they had spent time together. Finally, she asked the guards if they had seen him leave. The answer she received made no sense. Princess, Ambassador Tom has not left the palace. The security sensors show him still within the building, but we cannot determine his exact location. Zara spent the next 2 hours searching every room, every corridor, every storage area she could think of. It was not until she remembered the older sections of the palace, areas that had been sealed off for maintenance, that she found traces of his presence. Deep beneath the main structure, in a part of the palace that had not been used in decades, she discovered an entrance that should have been impossible to open. The door bore warnings in the oldest form of Kalari script, markings that even she had trouble reading. Beyond the door lay a chamber that took her breath away. The room was vast, filled with technology that seemed both ancient and impossibly advanced. Crystalline formations grew from floor to ceiling, pulsing with inner light that created patterns she had never seen. At the center of it all stood a massive computer core that dwarfed even the palace's main system. And connected to it, somehow interfacing directly with the alien machinery through touch alone, was Tom. His eyes were closed, but his consciousness seemed to be elsewhere, flowing through data streams and processing information at rates that would have destroyed any organic mind. Around him, the crystalline formations pulsed in harmony with his heartbeat. Zara approached carefully, afraid to disturb whatever was happening. As she got closer, she could see patterns of light moving beneath Tom's skin, following the paths of his nervous system like living circuitry. "Tom," she called softly. His eyes opened, but they now contained depths she had never imagined. When he spoke, his voice carried harmonics that resonated with the crystals around them. "Hello, Zara," he said. "I think it is time you learned why humans agreed to this marriage." The chamber filled with new light as ancient systems awakened from their long sleep. Zara realized she was about to discover truths that would change everything she thought she knew about the galaxy, about her people, and about the human she had married. "What is this place?" she whispered. Tom smiled, and the crystals sang in harmony with his voice. "This is where it all began. And where it will begin again." The crystalline chamber hummed with energy that seemed to flow through every surface. Zara stood frozen, watching her husband interface with technology that should not exist. Light patterns moved beneath Tom's skin like living circuits, and his eyes held knowledge that felt older than civilizations. "Tom, what are you?" Zara whispered. He turned toward her, still connected to the massive computer core. When he spoke, his voice carried the harmony of the crystals around them. "I am human, Zara. But humans are not what the galaxy believes them to be." The chamber walls came alive with holographic displays showing star charts that stretched across the entire galaxy. Zara recognized some of the systems, but many others were marked with symbols she had never seen. Long ago, Tom continued, before any of the current civilizations existed, humans traveled among the stars. We were not called humans then. We were simply the first ones, the species that learned to cross the void between worlds. Zara felt her crystalline skin shift to patterns of deep blue confusion. "That is impossible. Human civilization is barely 50 years old in galactic terms. You have no advanced technology, no psychic abilities, no extended lifespans." "We chose to give those things up," Tom said gently. "When you have lived for millions of years, when you have seen civilizations rise and fall like waves on a shore, you begin to understand that power without wisdom leads only to destruction." The displays around them shifted to show images of ancient worlds. Zara saw familiar architectural styles, technological designs that looked remarkably similar to modern Kalari and Torvan systems. "Your people, the Torvans, even the smaller species scattered throughout the galaxy, you are all our children in a sense. Millions of years ago, when we decided to step back from direct control of galactic affairs, we left behind genetic templates and technological seeds." "Genetic templates?" Zara asked, though part of her was beginning to understand. "The reason Kalari technology responds to me, the reason I can interface with your most advanced systems, is because they were designed by human ancestors. Every major technological breakthrough in galactic history has been the rediscovery of knowledge we embedded in your genetic memory." Tom gestured toward the displays, and they zoomed in on specific worlds. "The Kalari were among our most successful projects. We gave your ancestors curiosity and the drive to explore. The Torvans received strength and determination. Other species got different gifts, all designed to help them grow into something greater than we had been." Zara sank onto a crystalline formation that shaped itself into a chair to support her. The implications were staggering. If this is true, why reveal it now? Why not remain hidden? Tom's expression grew sad. "Because our children have grown old enough to destroy themselves. The war between your people and the Torvans has reached a point where it could spread across the galaxy. Other species are choosing sides, building weapons, preparing for conflicts that could wipe out everything we worked to create." New alarms began sounding from the palace above them. Zara activated her personal communicator and heard Commander Finn's urgent voice. "Princess, we have a crisis. Long-range sensors are detecting massive Torvan fleet movements. It appears the extremist attacks were a distraction. The main Torvan military is preparing for a full-scale invasion of Kalari space. Zara looked at Tom in desperation. The peace treaty means nothing to them. They were just buying time to position their forces. I know, Tom said calmly. We have been monitoring their communications for weeks. We? Tom smiled, and for the first time since she had known him, it was not entirely human. Zara, do you think I am the only human in the galaxy? My people have been watching and waiting for the right moment to reveal ourselves. That moment is now. He turned back to the computer core, and his connection deepened. The lights beneath his skin grew brighter, and the crystalline formations throughout the chamber began to resonate with harmonic frequencies. What are you doing? Zara asked. I am waking up the old network, Tom replied. Every piece of advanced technology in the galaxy contains quantum signatures from the original human designs. For millions of years, these signatures have been dormant, waiting for the right activation codes. The displays around them exploded with activity. Star charts updated in real time, showing the positions of ships, space stations, and planetary defense systems across hundreds of worlds. Zara watched in amazement as Tom's consciousness seemed to expand across vast distances. The Torvan fleet consists of 3,000 ships, Tom said, his voice now echoing with strange harmonics. Each ship contains navigation systems, weapon controls, life support, and communication arrays built on human-derived technology. Zara saw the Torvan fleet on the displays, a massive force moving toward Kalari space with devastating intent. Can you stop them? I can do better than that. Tom's connection to the network intensified, and suddenly every Torvan ship in the fleet began receiving the same transmission on all frequencies. Tom's voice, amplified across space, spoke directly to every crew member. People of the Torvan hegemony, this is Tom of Earth, speaking on behalf of the human species. Your ships are about to enter Kalari space with hostile intent. This cannot be allowed to continue. Admiral Crost, commander of the Torvan fleet, appeared on one of the displays as he responded to the transmission. His massive form and armored features showed the typical Torvan aggression. Human, you have no authority here. Earth is a minor world with no military power. Your threats are meaningless. Are they? Tom asked. Across the Torvan fleet, every weapon system suddenly powered down. Navigation controls locked onto new coordinates that would take the ships away from Kalari space. Life support systems continued working normally, but every aggressive system went dark. Admiral Crost's voice filled with rage. What sorcery is this? How are you controlling our ships? Not controlling, Tom corrected. Reminding. Every circuit in your ships, every quantum processor, every piece of technology you consider advanced, it all remembers its true makers. You have been using human technology for so long that you forgot where it came from. The displays showed similar effects happening across the galaxy. On Kalari worlds, ancient defense systems that had been dormant for centuries suddenly activated. Peaceful species found their communication networks enhanced, allowing instant contact across vast distances. Even the most primitive civilizations discovered that their basic technologies were working better than ever before. But Tom was not finished. For too long, the children of this galaxy have been fighting each other, his voice echoed across every inhabited world. You have forgotten that you are family, separated by distance and time but sharing the same origin. The wars must end. New signals appeared on the displays. Ships emerging from hidden locations throughout the galaxy, their designs unlike anything Zara had ever seen. They moved with impossible speed and grace, appearing near every major military installation and political center. The human fleet, Zara breathed. We never left, Tom said. We have been here all along, watching over our children, hoping you would learn to live in peace. But hope alone is not enough when extinction threatens. The human ships began transmitting their own messages. Each one was customized for the species receiving it, delivered in native languages and cultural contexts that each civilization could understand. But the core message was the same everywhere. The time of childhood was ending. The galaxy had grown too dangerous for its own good. The parents were returning to guide their children toward a better future. Admiral Crost made one final attempt at defiance. Even if you can control our technology, you cannot control our will. The Torvan people will never surrender to human authority. Who spoke of surrender? Tom asked gently. I am offering something much more valuable. I am offering you the chance to become what you were always meant to be. The displays shifted to show the Torvan homeworld. Deep beneath the planet's surface, ancient chambers similar to the one where Zara stood were awakening. Torvan scientists and leaders found themselves drawn to these hidden places, where they began to understand their own origins and potential. The same thing was happening on every advanced world in the galaxy. The children were remembering their heritage. Zara, Tom said, his voice returning to normal human tones as he stepped away from the computer core. Your people and the Torvans were never really enemies. You were both designed to be explorers and builders, to push the boundaries of what was possible. The war began because you forgot you were working toward the same goals. Zara felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of what she was learning. What happens now? Now we rebuild. The galaxy is large enough for every species to flourish. There are millions of unexplored worlds, scientific mysteries that will take centuries to solve, art and music and literature waiting to be created. The old reasons for fighting no longer apply. Tom took her hands in his, and she felt a warmth that was both human and something more. The marriage between us was not just political theater, Zara. It was a symbol of what the galaxy can become when different peoples choose unity over division. Above them, the palace alarms had gone silent. Through the crystal formations, they could hear sounds of celebration as news of the fleet's peaceful withdrawal spread throughout the Kalari worlds. Will you stay? Zara asked. Now that your people have revealed themselves, do you still need to maintain the marriage alliance? Tom smiled, and this time it was completely human. I would like to stay, if you will have me. There is still much work to do. The galaxy is full of species that have not yet reached the stars, civilizations that will need guidance as they grow. And I find that I enjoy being married to a Kalari princess. Zara felt her crystalline skin shift to patterns of warm gold, a color that had not appeared since her childhood. I think I would like that too. As they left the ancient chamber and returned to their normal lives, Zara understood that everything had changed. The galaxy was entering a new age, guided by the wisdom of an ancient species that had learned to value peace over power. The war was over. The real work of building a better future was just beginning. In the months that followed, former enemies became partners in exploration. The Torvan military fleet was converted into a peaceful research armada. Kalari worlds opened their borders to visitors from across the galaxy. And at the center of it all, the human species emerged from their long hiding to serve as teachers and guides for the civilization they had always protected. Princess Zara and her human husband became symbols of this new unity, proof that different peoples could not only coexist but thrive together. Their marriage had indeed ended a war, but it had accomplished something far greater. It had awakened a galaxy to its true potential.